All right. Welcome, everyone, to Garden of the Spirit, a class studying apples from the orchard for the second time. I'll never forgive Rudy for using that title, Garden of the Spirit. Beginning after Pesach 2014, this class meets in Longmeadow, Massachusetts, the Center Universe, and is held in memory of Malka Ruth Bas Moshe Margaret Polk of blessed memory. Apples from the Orchard contains selections of teachings of Allah from the Arizal, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, based on the weekly Torah portion, superbly translated and explained by Rabbi Moshe Wisniewski. Okay, we're at page 1275. And this is actually a continuation, chapter 1, from last week's class. And prepared this week, I did not review last week. Last week we spoke about Terumah. Terumah means giving a donation. Terumah literally is taken, the word Terumah is taken from Rum, which means harim, uplift. And we basically, if I remember correctly, we said that Terumah, giving a donation, opens the way for klipa, or whatever you have, opens the door for klipa. And by giving a donation, you uplift, you raise up the whole everything. So let's say you make $100, you give $1 to the homeless guy on the street, on the intersection, or at the leaving the supermarket. So you give tzedakah, you uplift the entire base amount, all $100. Okay, with that $100, with the $99 left, you take some of it, you might buy a video game. You might buy yourself a treat, a slice of pizza or an ice cream. The all $100 is uplifted from that $1 that you gave tzedakah. Basically, that's what we said. We connected. A little confused. We can also connect with the number 100. There are 100. We say 100 blessings every day. So that's connected also with the 100 because it's 1/100th is might be given to tzedakah, or 10. Okay. Then it's just one to call. Are you ready? So we're on 1275. At this point, the Arizal. So here we spoke about Terumah as any donation, but from here onward, the Arizal focuses on Terumah, which the generic term Terumah refers to the gift of a Kohen from your produce. So you got a nice farm, you get 100 bushels. You have to give to the Kohen. Now, the Torah does not set an amount. The rabbis set amounts of amounts to give to the Kohen. An average person gives 1/50th. A generous person gives 1/40th, and a parsimonious person gives 1/60th. Don't get to use that word parsimonious often. I stuck that in here. So the rabbis set these amounts: 1/40th, 1/50th, and 1/60th. And again, this is for the Terumah, specifically what we give to the Kohen. Of course, then give to the Levi 10%, what's left, and the Levi gives, of that 10%, the Levi is required to give 1/10 a Kohen. So
you're still breaking up terribly.
Terribly? Well, thanks for letting me know. I don't know what to do.
You're in and out.
I will talk less and I'll read more. Is that okay?
I don't think that's gonna help.
Well, you can see the sheet, right? You
Yeah.
can see the paper. So I'll read from here more. I just got a new, what do you call that thing? Router. They just sent me a new router that's supposed to work even better. 11. Oh, Alan, go ahead. Start reading.
There are three categories of donations. A generous person gives 1/40th of his profits, a stingy person gives 1/60th, and an average person gives 1/50th. So far in this exposition, the word donation has been used to refer to the donations that the Jewish people were bidden to contribute toward the construction and operation of the tabernacle. Besides this, the word donation, terumah, is used in the Torah to refer to a specific type of donation, namely, the portion of one's agricultural produce that must be separated and given to the priests who, being part of the tribe of Levi, possess no agricultural and therefore cannot subsist on by farming. The Torah does not prescribe any specific amount of one's produce that must be given to the Kohanim. But the sages teach us that a generous gift is 1/40th of one's produce. An average gift is 1/50th, and a stingy gift is 1/60th. Based on this, the Arizal will expound on the three types of donations to the Mishkan alluded to by the three instances of the word donation that appear in the beginning of Parsha Terumah.
Okay. I hope I'm coming through better. Maybe as time goes on, it'll be better. I do have full bars here. These 11. These three categories correspond to the three feminine partsufim: Ina, Tevuna, and Rachel. Tevuna is an extension of Ina. When they initiated the Mishkan, people were asked to donate for three funds: 15 materials listed, gold, silver, copper, etc., a half shekel that went to the communal offerings, and a half shekel that went to the silver sockets. Finally, the word terumah is written 3 times at the beginning of this parsha. Speak to the children of Israel, they shall take from me terumah. From every man whose heart will motivate him, you shall take my terumah. This is the terumah that you shall take from them. The first they shall take for me terumah is for the generous gift 1/40th. Corresponds to tevuna. You shall take my terumah. Is for the parsimonious gift 1/60th. Corresponds to bina. Notice that these do not go in order of highest gives the highest amount, the lowest gives the lowest amount. The actual word of the second instance is terumasi, my terumah, a short form of hatrumah shali, and it is formed by the word terumah with a yud at the end. From a perspective of Kabbalah, the yud at the end stands for the male component, as the yud of Hashem's name. The yud and first hey of Hashem's name stand for Chachma and Bina. We are told that Chachma and Bina never separate. They are always in a state of interaction, as opposed to Ze'er Anpin and Malchus, which interact depending on the flow of divine energy. Is that, I'm still broken up?
Yeah,
Okay. Go ahead, Jim. It was Alan at the bottom.
these three categories correspond to the three principal feminine partsufim. Bina, that is Ima, Tavuna, and Rachel. They also correspond to the three types of donations that are mentioned in the Torah as pertaining to the Mishkan. Correspondingly, the word donation is mentioned 3 times in this passage. The first is, they must take a donation for me. This refers to the generous contribution of 1/40th, which corresponds to Tavuna. The second is take my donation, corresponding to Bina. The word for my donation is formed by combining the word for donation and the letter Yud, which signifies the male principle. For the Yud of Yesod of Abba is always conjoined with it, and they never separate. As we have seen, Tavuna, comprehension, is applied intellect, as opposed to Ima itself, which is abstract intellect. There are other feminine partsufim, most notably Leah, but these are 3 that are relevant to the present discussion. The word for my donation is terumah, which is simply the word for donation, with the first personal singular possessive suffix, the yud. It's not terumah. It's what? Terumas. We have terumah C. We have seen numerous times that the yud of the name Havaya represents chachma, or its derivative parts of Abba, the higher male principle. The vav of this name represents the midos, or their derivative parts of Zeranpin, which is the lower male principle. The 2 heys of this name represent respectively Ima, the higher female principle, and Nukva, the lower female principle. The union of Abba and Ima is constant. The Zohar therefore describes them as the 2 companions who never separate.
Okay. The third instant, this is the Terumah, corresponds to the average gift of 150 and to the feminine component Rachel. There are 2 words for this in Hebrew, Zeh and Zot. Zeh, which is masculine, and Zot, which is feminine. The Torah precedes Terumah with Zot. This is. It also uses the definite particle va, which in Hebrew is simply the letter Hey before the word ha-terumah. As we said many times, letter Hey in Hashem's name stands for the feminine principle. So what we have here is Vizot Terumah, that Zot and the Hey both indicate the feminine principle, even though all 3 occurrences of Terumah are all feminine. But we see this especially with the third one. Go ahead, Ellen.
The third is, this is the donation, which corresponds to Rachel. This is alluded to by the word for this is, which is in the feminine, and by the word for the donation, which is formed by the letter Hey, and the word for donation, for she is alluded to by the letter Hey. There are 2 forms of the demonstrative pronoun this in Hebrew, masculine one, zo, and the feminine one, zos. The definite article in Hebrew is the letter Hey prefix to the noun it defines. So the expression, they must take a donation for me, is the generous 1/40th, and it's tavuna. Take my donation is stingy 1/60th, and it's ima or bina. And this is the donation, is the average 1/50th, which is Rachel.
Okay, to review, the lowest of the 3 feminine partsufim, Rachel, is for a gift of 150. The 2 higher feminine partsufim, Vuna and Bina, are for 140 and 160. Letters with gematria of 40 and 60 are Mem and Samach. And of course, there are two forms of Mem. One moment.
We frozen?
No, tells me
Okay.
if I close some applications, close some things on my computer, it might have better sound. Okay, I don't know. I tried closing some. So we have Mem and Samach, and of course there are two forms of Mem. Mem at the beginning and middle of a word, which is open at the bottom, and the Mem, which is at the end of a word, which is closed all around. To change a Mem into a Samach, we add a Yud at the top and a Yud at the bottom. It's not clear if this means an open Mem or a closed Mem. It's not clear to me exactly what this means. Perhaps the Yud at the bottom is to close the opening. I don't know. But numerically, if we add two Yuds to Mem, we have 10 plus 10 plus 40 equals 60, same as Samach. So it tells you by shape, if you add a Yud at the top and a Yud at the bottom of the Mem, it turns into a Samach, and I don't get. This is what it says. Alan, go ahead. Above her.
Above her, that is Rachel, are the two levels that correspond to giving one part out of 40 and one part out of 60. 60 corresponds to Bina. The form of the letter that represents the number 60, Samach, is the same as that of the letter Mem, which represents the number 40 itself, except that a Yud has been added to the form of the Mem on top and another Yud on the bottom in order to form the Samach. As we have seen, the letters Samach and Mem are associated with Ima and Tevuna, respectively. The numerical values of these letters are 60 and 40, respectively. The numerical value of the letter Yud is 10. Thus, adding two Yuds graphically to a Mem produces a Samach, is also adding two Yuds, 20, numerically to a Mem, 40, to produce a Samach, 60.
So it works, they say it works graphically, but also it works numerically. That one I can follow.
Yeah.
Mem 40 and Samach 60 equals 100. Terumah is in the singular because 100 represents one whole. The word Terumah can be seen as Rei Mimea, 2 from 100. Terumah, Rei Mimea, 2 from 100, which is the amount the average person gives. These two are Tevuna and Bina. Jim, go ahead.
Okay. The sum of the numerical values of Mem and Samach is 100. This is why the word for donation appears in the singular. The two feminine principles under discussion at this point are thus 2 out of 100, that is Bina and Tevuna, for they are one. The word for donation can be interpreted as a contraction of the words for 2 out of 100. 2 out of 100 is 1/50th of the average donation, in which the generous, which is 1/40th, and the stingy 1/60th donations combined conceptually to their common average. Thus, the word terumah itself alludes to the average value, which is 2/100ths. Elsewhere, the Arizal states that the 2 out of 100 are the partzufim of Rachel and Leah. Okay. And the 100 is the partzufim of Ema, from whence they issue. Okay.
Okay. Blessing comes from Kavuna and Bina. Blessing bracha begins with the letter Bez. Name of the letter means house. When the Torah tells the Kohen Gadol to atone on account of himself and his house refers to his wife.
Mhm.
And blessings come on account of one's wife. Letter Bez is the number 2. There are 2 female components, Kavuna and Bina. On the other hand, the first letter Aleph is associated with the male principle.
Mhm. So, blessing issues from both of them. For the feminine principle is always referred to as house, which is the meaning of the name of the letter Beit. In contrast, the male principle is alluded to by the letter Aleph, inasmuch as the numerical value of the letter Beit is 2, there are 2 feminine principles, and blessings issues from them both. I would say issue instead of issues, but whatever, from them both. As we have seen previously, the feminine principle embodies the divine imperative to transform the physical world into God's home or house. Thus, the sages tell us that when the Torah says that the high priest must perform certain rites on Yom Kippur in order to atone for himself and his house means his wife. Thus, the association between the feminine principle and the house and the concept of house is clear. The Hebrew word for house is bayit. Altering the vocalization of this word yields a name for the Hebrew letter base. Base is also the initial letter of the word for blessing, as pointed out in the Zohar. Blessing is associated with a woman, as the sages teach. A man without a wife is devoid of joy, blessing, and goodness.
Okay. 17. A parsimonious person gives 1/60th to the Kohen, which is Bina. The fact he is tight-fisted indicates that Klipa is present. The association with Bina helps prevent Klipa from taking hold.
Therefore, if the donor feels stingy, which perforce indicates that the forces of evil have at least some hold over him, he must specifically give 1/60th. For this number alludes to Bina above, which must be guarded against the powers of evil. We've seen previously the judgment originates in Bina, for Bina must distinguish between the pure, correct implications of the insight of Chachma and impure admixtures that originate in the individual's unrectified ego. Therefore, Bina must be especially guarded against the intrusion of the forces of evil that can potentially draw sustenance from the stern, judgmental attitude that I would think characterizes Bina. A stingy donor is one who has overexercised his judgmental attitude. He's examined the prospective recipient of his gift, found him to be undeserving of his full generosity. In most cases, this is because of the donor's inflated ego, makes him look condescendingly upon others. By giving 1/60th of his produce, as opposed to less, the stingy giver at least protects his bina from further invasion by the forces of evil. This will hopefully enable him to give more in the future. We would have expected the stingy person to be encouraged to give more as a way of breaking his stinginess. But evidently, the fear here is that since evil has such a great hold over him, giving more would enrage him so much that his anger and his resentment would give additional power to the forces of evil. So in order to avoid this, his gift must be kept to a minimum until he succeeds in extricating himself from this negativity and this judgmental attitude.
I'm going to suggest, can you hear me or still choppy?
No, now
You're
it's
good.
better.
Yeah, you're good.
I'm going to suggest that there's another danger here that we limit him to 60 if he's stingy. If he gives 40, he might get really, really proud of himself. It might have a really bad effect on his ego. So we tell him, no. You keep giving 1/60th. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me read. I'm sorry, you want to say something?
No, it's another form of how evil can manifest itself. In fact, it might be even stronger than anger. This self worship.
Okay. Thanks. 18. What helps keep at bay is the presence of Chachma with Bina. As we said, they are partners that always interact. This is the word Terumah, my Terumah, which has the additional yud at the end, representing the male component. So the fact that Chachma is there helps, or that the male component is there helps keep Kippah away. Go ahead, Jim.
This is why the expression associated with this level of giving, my donation, referring to the male principles, which is always conjoined with her and never separates from her. Since Abba and Eva are always conjoined, Ima's donation is considered Abba's as well, since Abba is the source of Eva's content. Their combined gift is described as coming from Abba.
Okay, Kavuna is hidden. Generous person gives 1/40, 1/40. Since Kavuna is hidden, corresponds to the closed mem. Closed mem is always at the end of the word, with one exception. In Yeshaya chapter 9, verse 6. It says, L'marbe misra l'shalom gates, for increasing dominion and infinite peace. This is contrast to the open mem, which represents the level of Rachel. This, by the way, has references to Mashiach. I think it talks about the king at the time of Yeshaya, king who was Yeshaya's son-in-law, King Chizkiah, also who had the opportunity to be Mashiach. So this pasuk also has references to Mashiach. Okay, go ahead, Jim.
Tavuna is concealed. Therefore, a generous contribution is 1/40th of the whole. The number 40 is associated with Tavuna, which is alluded to by the final mem, occurring exceptionally in the middle of the word and to increase the rain. In contrast, Rachel is alluded to by the open form of the mem. Tavuna issues from the back of Ima and is concealed behind her. It is therefore shielded from attacks of the forces of evil. For this reason, it can give generously without any fear that the forces of evil will derive sustenance from its gift. Once the intellect has made transition from abstract to applied, the goal is clearly defined, and there is less concern it can be misled into distorted conclusions. The numerical value of the letter mem is 40. The only instance of a final letter appearing in the middle of a word in the Bible is the final mem appearing in the middle of the word and to increase. This indicates that the increase, that is donation, alluded to here is one that is completely enclosed, that is protected from external threat.
Which is Tavuna.
Mhm.
Okay. The first incident, occurrence of Terumah is Yikhu li Terumah, they shall take for me Terumah. The gematria of li, for me, is also 40.
Mhm.
This word for me represents the masculine principle. Like Bina, feminine principle is attached to a masculine principle. While the Terumah that refers to Bina has the masculine in the same word, Terumasi, this Terumah, which refers to Tavuna, is the masculine principle in a separate word, li, for me.
So the phrase referring to Tavuna is a donation for me. The numerical value of the word for me is 40. This feminine principle is always united with the masculine principle, albeit not to the same extent as is Bina, that is Ima. The expression referred to is therefore not my donation, only a donation for me. The word for me is li. 30 plus 10 is 40. So once intellect has become applied or concrete, it is no longer as conscious of the insight of Chachma that gave rise to it as it was when it was abstract. Okay.
Okay. I don't see what that has to do with it. Whatever. 21. The lowest of the three is Vizos HaTruma. This is the Truma that corresponds to Rachel and to the average Truma 1/50th. At this level, it is not possible to prevent from attaching itself to holiness. There is no use add a masculine principle, just as my Truma or for me Truma. Therefore, just the word Truma is written. Okay, go ahead.
In reference to Rachel, by contrast, there's no possessive attached to the word for donation whatsoever. Just the absolute form of the word, this is the donation. It corresponds to the average donation, 1/50th. For the perspective at this level, although not stingy, is also not generous, for we still require it. It is thus inevitable that the forces of evil will attach themselves somewhat at this level. Rachel, the parts of Malchut, is the most exposed to the forces of evil since it descends into the lower worlds. Nevertheless, since it is much more goal-oriented than Ima, abstract intellect, it is more immune to corruption than it is.
The main level to be repaired is the generous gift to the Kohen 1/40th. This level above is hidden, and it is not really necessary for protected from Kalipa.
Therefore, the main level that must be accessed in order to rectify matters is that of Tuvuna. This is the level of the generous gift. Above, it is concealed, and there is therefore no need to be wary of the forces of evil at this level.
We've said before 23. We said before that the letter Mem, 1/40th, the letter Samach, say 1/60th, or 40 and 60, correspond to Kavuna and Bina. Both of these letters are made basically of 4 lines arranged in a square. We pointed out before that the closed Mem represents the womb. I think it was the flood, 40 days of the flood. 3 lines are for Netzach Hod Yesod of the female principle, and the 4th line for Yesod of the male principle.
So, as it was noted above, Bina and Tavuna are represented by the Mem and the Samach, both of which consist of 4 lines, forming a square or a quasi-square figure. This is because the feminine principle is always associated with the 3 Sephirot, Netzach Hod Yesod. These 3 are represented by 3 sides of a square. The Yesod of the male principle is represented by the 4th side of the square, which closes it. Altogether, there are thus 4 lines.
Okay. We said in number 21 that the 3rd occurrence of Terumah, Zos HaTerumah, has no male principle attached to the word. At this level, the feminine component interacts with the masculine component intermittently. Zeram and Malchus. Therefore, the first letter Hey has 3 lines, is attached to the word at its front. These, where it says Zos HaTerumah, that letter Hey. The 3 lines represent Netzach Hod and Yesod of the female component.
So in contrast, Rachel, with whom the male Yesod associates only occasionally, is alluded to by the Hey at the beginning of the word for the donation. For it, the letter Hey consists of only 3 lines. Above, we said that Rachel is represented by the open Mem. The idea is the same.
Okay. I think we should stop here.
Okay.
We've done 5 pages. There's a lot here that's not clear. I explained it as best I could, but not. There's a lot that's not clear what's here. Let me just stop this. Next is January 3rd. Okay, I can see you guys now.
Mhm.
Okay. So yeah, next goes into more things with numbers. I like numbers better. Either they add up or they don't. Oh, hold on.